morning we have two scripture readings. The first one is from the book of James. If you know anything about the book of James, you know that James is not a mincer of words. He's always very clear when he talks about a topic, and his speaking about the tongue is no different. This is what James says to us. Not many of you should presume to be teachers, my brothers and sisters, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. If anyone is never at fault in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouth of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, sets the whole course of his life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. And the second reading, we have one last week here in Proverbs. I hope you've enjoyed our time here, our brief time in Proverbs. Today's reading is from Proverbs 26, beginning with verse 18. Like a madman shooting firebrands or deadly arrows is a man who deceives his neighbor and says, "I was only joking." Without wood, a fire goes out. Without gossip, a quarrel dies down. As charcoal to embers and as wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to a man's inmost parts. Like a coat of glaze over earthenware are fervent lips with an evil heart. A malicious man disguises himself with his lips, but in his heart he harbors deceit. Though his speech is charming, do not believe him, for 7 abominations fill his heart. His malice may be concealed by deception, but his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. If a man digs a pit, he will fall into it. If a man rolls a stone, it will roll back on him. A lying tongue hates those it hurts, and a flattering mouth works ruin. Mary always knew she was different from the other kids. Born with a cleft palate, Mary had to bear the jokes and stares of cruel children who teased her because of her misshapen lip, crooked nose, and garbled speech. Growing up knowing that she was different, Mary was convinced that no one outside of her family could ever love her until she entered Mrs. Leonard's class. Mrs. Leonard had a warm smile, a round face, and shiny brown hair. While everyone in her class liked her, Mary came to love Mrs. Leonard. In the 1950s, it was common for teachers to give their children an annual hearing test, and in addition to her cleft palate, Mary was barely able to hear out of one ear. And determined not to let the other children have a difference to point out, she would cheat on the test every year. The whisper test was given by having a child walk to the classroom door, turn sideways, close one ear with a finger, and then repeat something the teacher whispered. Mary turned her bad ear toward her teacher and pretended to cover her good ear. She knew teachers would often say things like, "The sky is blue," or "What color are your shoes?" But not on that day. Surely God put 7 words into Mrs. Leonard's mouth that changed Mary's life forever. When the whisper test came, Mary heard the words, "I wish you were my little girl." Words are powerful. While words from a godly teacher can melt a heart, words from a father and mother can powerfully set the course of a life. Words like, "Way to go, I knew you could do it. I couldn't be prouder of you. I'm praying for you." One of this week's questions, Proverbs 15:4 says, "The tongue that brings healing is a tree of life, but a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit." Right words are like nourishing, health-giving food. What are some examples of right words that can heal? When have you given life-giving words? And when have you received life-giving words? You know, words are powerful. And physical wounds, I think, can heal often long before emotional ones. I would bet that if we were all honest, that most, if not all of us, can remember hurtful words said. Perhaps they were said to you, or perhaps they were words that you regret saying and wish you could have back. Words like, I hate you. You will never amount to anything. No one cares about you. Words can be very destructive. And understanding the harmful power of our words, Solomon warns us about them repeatedly. I'm telling you, this sermon would have been 10 days long if we would have gone all the way through Proverbs and everything it has to say about words. Go home and use your concordance and look up some of these and read them. Solomon warns us repeatedly. Why? Because we don't get it. We don't get that the tongue holds the power of life and death. That's from Proverbs 18:21. While we know our tongues contain this power, we often cannot control them. Now, we said they're what size compared to the rest of our body? What size is your tongue? Small, relatively, right? I mean, it's not like your leg, okay? Or even your whole rest of your head. It's small, but we cannot control it. We try. And a lack of self-control when it comes to our tongues, we know it destroys marriages, it destroys families, it destroys friendship, but the problem continues. And harmful words reveal a heart out of tune with Jesus. So let's take a look at some of what Proverbs has to say about harmful words, and let's see if change is possible. Well, first, Proverbs talks about contentious or quarrelsome speech. Man, are we seeing this, right? Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. When have you seen harsh words stir up anger? I'm talking about contentious speech. You know what I'm talking about? It's a speech that loves to stir up conflict. It's a speech that loves to argue, disagree, and constantly criticize. This is the type of person who will argue about anything. Have you known somebody like that? Brian's laughing, right? We know people like that, right? They will argue about the sports, what color the sky is. They will argue about TV shows. They'll argue about the Bible, politics, everything known to man and known to people. Contentious people make everything a major battle. Okay, we say they major in the minors. Nothing's ever quite right, and even in the church, maybe we've encountered somebody like that, where there can be people who like to complain, they like to stir up trouble, and to get what they want, they threaten to leave. They say, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to quit the marriage, I quit the church, I quit being your sister or your brother. Now, contentious people, they love to start a fire. And James compares the tongue to a fire. Now, fire can be used in good and bad ways. Just as words can be used to help or hurt, a fire can cook a yummy supper. It lights a birthday candle. It purifies water. It dries out clothes. It allows us to see in the dark. A fire keeps us toasty warm. But a fire can also hurt all sorts of things and people. I think about my friends in Colorado, right? These huge fires in Colorado, California, that what do? Once they're out of control, what happens? They just trash everything in their way, don't they? And out of control, a fire just consumes all in its path. It's really scary to read about out there is how the wind turns up, right? And all of a sudden, a mile has burned in a quick amount of time. James 3 from the Message says, it only takes a spark remembered to set off a forest fire. A careless or wrongly placed word out of your mouth can do that. By our speech, we can ruin the world, turn harmony to chaos, throw mud on a reputation, send the whole world up in smoke, and go up in smoke with it, smoke right from the pit of hell. Harmful words reveal a heart out of tune with Jesus. Now, we also see the power of the tongue when we hear words of deception. Proverbs 26:18-19 says, like a madman who throws flaming darts and deadly arrows, so is the person who deceives his neighbor and said, I was only joking. Deception can be embellishment, exaggeration, half-truths, omission. intentional misrepresentations, truth in jest or perjury. You hurt somebody's feelings, and then you say, I was just kidding, and you laugh in order to minimize their pain, but really, you knew you meant what you said. Or what about an exaggeration? I'm trying to impress you, so I use my words to construct false realities. I remember a time when a dear lady passed away, and her family bragged on and on about how her grandson, who this was not somebody from Red Oak, this person lived far from Red Oak. He was the most marvelous funeral home director that ever walked the earth, okay? But when it came down to it, he was highly disorganized. We got ready to start, and I was like, okay, I said to people, where is he? It's time to start. He was disorganized. He needed prompts from other folks to get his job done. But before we point too many fingers, all of us do this kind of thing. Who has not exaggerated a little bit, or you leave out a couple of little details to come off sounding better? How many of you, let's take a poll here, how many of you made a concerted effort to teach your children to lie? Did you have to sit down and say, now, by age, let's see, let's pick an age. I don't know, 5? 5's a nice number, right? By 5, we got to teach them how to lie. Did you do that? No, right? Children struggle to come clean even when we say tell the truth and you won't get in trouble. They're still like, no. Teenagers cheat in school to get good grades or to tell a lie to their parents about where they're going. Adults lie about things like being sick or hiding things from their spouse, right? People of all ages put the blame on somebody else even when it's their fault, so the person's mad at somebody else rather than them. And we think, why do we deceive? Well, I think we do it because we want something, and we think twisting the truth is going to help us get it. We want people to be impressed by us. We try to find satisfaction in people's approval, which we value more often and more than God's approval. Harmful words reveal a heart out of tune with Jesus. Now, we talked last week about gossip, and it's interesting that I think Proverbs 28:22 is exactly the same as Proverbs 18:8. Solomon's like, okay, in case you didn't get it last time, I'm going to say the exact same thing. Now, I found that when people gossip, there are some people who just love to be in the know. What about you? If somebody gives you a confidence, can you keep it? Or do you regularly start sentences with, don't tell anybody this, but... Some people even try to disguise their gossip and slander as a prayer request. Oh, you know what? I heard he was having financial troubles. He just sold that new car. And you know what? You should see about him and his marriage, right? We need to pray for him. Okay? We gossip because we're prideful. We want to be in the know. We gossip because we want to get back at somebody. We're jealous of them. And we find out that life isn't as perfect. And we're kind of secretly a little bit glad. Harmful words reveal a heart out of tune with Jesus. When we're speaking words from Jesus, they are always full of truth. But not so with other people's words, not so with all of other people's words. Proverbs 26:23 points to a vulnerability we all face when listening to another's words. No matter how fervent they appear, they can, like a pottery glaze, isn't this quite a picture? A pottery glaze that hides something underneath. The question is, do you think there's any way to test words like you would evaluate a shiny piece of pottery? When I was working on my sermon, I was thinking about my time working at West Corporation in Human Resources. I tell you, that job taught me a lot about a lot of things, okay? And there was one telemarketing group, there was an inbound group, they took calls for Commonwealth Edison, okay? And if something happened, it was usually over there. Stuff like one time somebody came and picked up their check in a bikini, okay? Stuff like that. That's the sort of things that happen. And so we'd have to go to people, okay, seriously, you can't be wearing a bikini into the job site. Cindy's laughing. Into the job site to pick up your paycheck, okay? Why that would occur to you, I don't know. But anyway, okay, so one of the supervisors over there, every time I saw her, she was just abundantly overflowing with flattery. You know somebody like that? And she would just gush on and on and on about my clothes. Oh my gosh, where did you get that? That's just so beautiful. I just love that. I can't believe how nicely that fits on you. And on and on and on. And you go, okay. And I was saying to myself, what is going on over here? Okay? Why are you trying so hard to flatter me? What are you hiding? That's what flattery is. It's smooth talk. It's words that praise others to manipulate the circumstance to your advantage. It can be deception. It can be exaggerating the truth to get a reaction to make yourself look good. It's a form of manipulation to advance yourself. There's nothing genuine about flattery. Okay? Flattery can also be flirting with somebody else. You're feeling a little misunderstood in your marriage. You're unhappy with yourself, so you start flirting with a coworker or a neighbor or in a chat room, and he or she says things you want to hear. You're so wonderful. You're so smart. Your spouse must be a fool. It starts maybe relatively innocently, but quickly you move from flirting to cheating on your spouse. People tell others what they want to hear. Why? Because they want admiration. They want their own needs met. Proverbs obviously condemns this kind of speech. Harmful words reveal a heart out of tune with Jesus. Words have the power to heal and to hurt. One of our questions this week was about today's technology enhancing these truths. I've sent out these questions, and often I've thought, I hope people are reading these and studying these, and I got a comment back from somebody this week, and that was encouraging to me. And so we had a little conversation about how it is harder with technology today, right? It's also more challenging because words aren't spoken once and then forgotten. They're recorded somewhere. You know, many, if not all of us, I think, are under far more pressure in today's world. We're grieving the things that we're missing due to COVID. We're feeling anxious about everything. The political climate, COVID, our finances, our jobs. What are we doing about the holidays? We're stressed about our kids, our grandchildren, our family. So we as Christians, I think, have to be especially careful when we communicate via text or email or with a mask on. It is so easy to have your words misinterpreted. Okay? Abby and I were in Old Navy. We went in there and we got some clothes. Okay? We bought clothes for everybody. Okay? And we had gigantic bags, and we got to the end, and you know what? It had not all rung through. And it was a younger guy, and you could tell, even with his mask on, he was like, oh my gosh, what is this lady going to do? We're going to have to, it didn't all go through. And you know, I smile at him, and then I go to myself, okay, people can't see you're smiling, okay? It's like nodding on the phone. There's no point in it, okay? And so I said something to him intentionally to let him know, you know what, it's okay. It's not your fault. It's the machine. I'm sure he wasn't thrilled to run back through. They had to take everything out of the bag and run it back through. Okay? It's easy to misinterpret somebody else. It's easy also to project your feelings onto somebody else, and you totally misinterpret what they're saying to you. Now, I don't know about you, but I need to say to myself, you know what, you've got to offer yourself some grace, and you got to offer other people a lot of grace too. We've got to offer people more patience and kindness than ever, and we've got to use our words to show that we're Christian. There was a group of frogs that were hopping contentedly through the woods, going about their froggy business, when two of them fell into a deep pit. And all the other frogs gathered around the edge of the pit to see what could be done to help their companions. And when they saw how deep the pit was, the rest of the dismayed group agreed it was hopeless. And they told the two frogs in the pit they should prepare themselves for their fate because they were as good as dead. Now, unwilling to accept this, the two frogs began to jump with all their might, and some of the frogs shouted into the pit that it was hopeless. And the two frogs wouldn't be in that situation if they'd been more careful, more obedient to the froggy rules, and more responsible. And the other frogs just kept shouting at them that they should give up since they were already good as dead. But the two frogs continued jumping as hard as they could, and after several hours of desperate effort, they were weary. And one of the frogs finally heeded the calls of his fellow frogs. And spent and disheartened, he resigned himself to his fate. He lay down at the bottom of the pit, and he died as the other ones looked on in helpless grief. But the other frog continued to jump with every ounce of energy he had, although his body was racked with pain, and he was completely exhausted. His companions began anew, yelling for him to accept his fate, stop the pain, and just die. But the weary frog jumped harder and harder, and wonder of wonders, he finally leapt so high that he sprang from the pit. Now, amazed, the other frogs celebrated his miraculous freedom, gathering around him and asked, "Why did you continue jumping when we told you it was impossible?" Well, reading their lips, the astonished frog explained to them that he was deaf, and that when he saw their gestures and shouting, he thought they were cheering him on. And what he had perceived as encouragement inspired him to try harder and to succeed against all odds. Now, this simple story, it contains a powerful lesson, doesn't it? There is life and death in the power of the tongue. How do we learn to ensure that our words bring healing and not hurt people? We need to learn to control our impulses and speak wisely. We need to speak kindly. We've got to think about the other person and not just our own needs. Your encouraging words can lift somebody up and help them make it through the day. Your destructive words cause deep wounds, and they may be the weapons that destroy someone else's desire to keep trying. Speak life to and about other people that cross your path. There is enormous power in words. If you have words of kindness, praise, encouragement, speak them now to and about other people. Don't wait. Somebody somewhere is waiting for your words. Proverbs 16:24 says, "Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body." Harmful words reveal a heart out of tune with Jesus. Saying negative words, walking in foolishness with your words, have all kinds of negative consequences, including destroying relationships. I would bet all of us have either experienced that ourselves or know relationships that are destroyed by people saying things and you can't take them back. And while words destroy human relationships, they also destroy our relationship with God. In Matthew 12:36, this is one of these cringeworthy verses. Jesus says we will be held accountable for every careless word we utter. You know, Jesus never sinned with his mouth at all. He never hardened anyone with his words. He never let deceit slip from his lips, and yet Jesus took the final judgment for our harmful speech to provide us forgiveness in full. You know, when the gospel really takes hold of our lives, we start choosing through the power of the Holy Spirit to use our tongues to give life. You know, I think when our tongues start a fire, let that fire be life-giving. Let our words spread like wildfire from one person to the next, giving warmth and light and sustenance. Words are powerful. Proverbs 18:21 in the Message says, "Words kill, words give life. They're either poison or fruit. You choose." Friends, we know the tongue is difficult to tame, but it's possible through the power of the Holy Spirit to use words that give all of us life. Let's choose today to use our tongues to spread the good news of Jesus Christ to all. Amen.